Alright guys, how are we doing today? Steve Mingle, Final Web Design. In today's video, I want to talk about Web 3.0 as we're going through this big crypto bull rush and what it means for right now, what it means for the future, and what my thoughts are on Web 3.0. So let's get into it. Final Web Design, this is Steve. Alright guys, so I got a quick video here I'm going to start off with that kind of goes into Web 3.0 and what we're kind of going through right now. Let's just take a look at it and then I'll come back with my thoughts and we can dive into it in more detail.
The rise of Web 3 and whether it's truly making people overnight millionaires. Web 3 has become one of the most talked about fields in technology and finance, with many seeing it as the future of the internet and a game changer for financial independence. But how true is the idea that people are getting rich quickly in Web 3? Well, like any investment opportunity, the reality is complex. First, Web 3 encompasses decentralized technologies like blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and decentralized finance, DeFi, platforms. While there have been some incredible success stories where people made significant...
So I just want to stop that right there. Basically, Web 3 is blockchain. That's essentially it. We'll go into more detail what blockchain is, but that's the concept behind Web 3.0.
Gains in a short time. These are exceptions rather than the norm. The media often highlights stories of crypto millionaires, but it's essential to remember that these successes come with a lot of risks. One of the main reasons Web 3 has created wealth for some is the early adoption factor. Early investors in projects like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and successful NFT collections saw massive returns, partly because they entered before the masses. However, with high reward comes high risk.
I just gotta say that part right there. It said because most people who made a lot of money on Web 3.0 or cryptocurrency entered before the masses. That's just something I have to say right now is I don't even think the masses have even started adopting. I think we're still at the very beginning. I know the last week or two things have really taken off, but you know, in my personal life, a fraction of people that I know actually own any type of blockchain asset or cryptocurrency. So I think that statement as far as they entered before the market isn't necessarily true, because I still think that the market essentially is just getting going.
Many Web 3 projects are still experimental, and some have ended in losses as markets fluctuate wildly. Additionally, the promise of decentralization in Web 3 offers financial freedom but lacks traditional financial protections. Unlike the stock market, where companies are regulated and listed, Web 3 assets are often created by startups or independent developers with minimal oversight. This opens the door to innovation but also scams, failed projects, and high volatility. So, is Web 3 a path to overnight wealth? For a few, maybe. But for most, it's a high-stakes, high-risk investment that requires a cautious approach. If you're interested in Web 3, make sure to do your research. Invest only what you can afford to lose, and avoid falling for get-rich-quick promises.
Alright, so that was kind of fun to watch. It's definitely got some truths there, and it's got some things that I want to touch on. Now, the first thing is they kind of stated there, Web 3 is decentralized. That essentially means that there is no government or corporation that's overlooking Web 3, or at least in this case, what I guess I'm referring to, because each one's a little bit different in how they function. Something like Bitcoin, it's almost like an open source project where it's continued to change and update as people have, submitted code to the repository. Now, this can't just be done by anyone because it has to be done through the community, which basically means that you're not going to be able to change or update Bitcoin. Like, there's no person, there's no CEO. The only person that was behind Bitcoin, as they say, is Satoshi, who, in my personal opinion, I believe, and now this is going into my beliefs, this is nothing out there that's saying this, I believe it was the CIA. However, even though it was the CIA that created it, or who I believe created it, they essentially still have to have it's out of the can. Like, nobody can go back and take it back because it's an open source property that is managed by the community at this stage. So it's decentralized in the fact that no government is essentially holding the keys and can shut it off. There's no corporation or CEO that can go and turn it off. Now, one thing that they did mention there was that it does have security issues, but those security issues are nothing more than being responsible for your, investments. You have to understand how to protect your crypto or your Web3 properties with something like a ledger or some type of encoded keys, so that you're not, essentially going to lose your wealth. Because yes, there is no Visa hotline or Chase Bank you can call up and say, hey, I messed up my money. No, you have to be responsible in that, because it is decentralized. So that's where you have this give or take. Another thing that they quickly mentioned there was just that a lot of people have already made their wealth on it, as opposed to what's coming in the future. And I find that very underestimating where we're at in the Web3 world. Because as far as a property like crypto, there's very few people that I still know that own any type of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. And if I could even go back to a year ago when I was doing this, as opposed to where things are today, I think people have really evolved and changed in a way that they're continuing to learn more, and people are doing more research. However, again, it's out of the can. Nobody's going to be able to take it back. It's just getting started. There's a lot of countries, whether you look at a place like Venezuela or Argentina, or parts of Eastern Europe or parts of Asia, where their currency, even the United States, our currency is devaluing at such a pace that it's hard. If you keep $10,000 in your bank account, essentially next year that's going to be worth 3% less, or $300, $400, $500 less than it was this year. So you're losing value on your currency. Whereas something like a Bitcoin, you are essentially gaining, your currency is gaining value, because there is a limited supply of 21 million Bitcoins, and there will never be more, as far as how the Bitcoins are set up, because ultimately those cryptos are being divided by everybody who wants to go out there and buy some. So there's a lot of people in countries I know personally, in places like Argentina, where their currency has devalued so harshly due to inflation that it's a better investment for them to put their money into Bitcoins than it is to keep it in their local currency, because ultimately their currency is going to go down. And that's the thing that I don't think enough people are grasping quite yet about crypto and about Bitcoin, is that it is a limited supply that will never be more of it out there. So getting some today is always going to be better than getting some in the future, because ultimately you're sharing it with multiple different business or people around the world. And that's another thing. It's a global asset. When I travel the world, I like to keep Bitcoin because I can cash it out in a way that I can't with US dollars. Well, US dollars are actually pretty beneficial, but a lot of currencies it's very hard to use internationally, whereas something like Bitcoin, it's a much more international based currency, and the technology is only getting better. I think maybe one of the issues with crypto and Web 3.0 is that we've got to a point where the user interface maybe isn't as good as it should be, but I think that's changing and evolving rapidly, which is making it easier to use. So this is just kind of my 2 cents. I wanted to look at that video. I wanted to give you my thoughts on Bitcoin and crypto and where things are at right now, as we're breaking into 90K today. Yesterday was 85K, so you're seeing these huge increments. And yes, it's going to go down, but you got to think long term. You have to think, what is in 10 years? Is technology going to be more adaptable or less adaptable? Is the US dollar going to be more valuable or less valuable? These are all questions that you need to take into consideration. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just into IT and tech. However, you do have to do your own research and really understand where you're putting this. I don't see it as a gamble. I see it as an investment. But everybody's going to take it differently, and everybody's going to have to, look to the future and see what they think is best. So with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll catch you in